Lego Harry Potter made me lose my mind, so I'm going to be running the Peppa Pig games, starting with my friend Peppa Pig. After creating my persona, the speedrun officially begins. As soon as we load into the tutorial, we want to immediately return to the main menu. Once we load back, we'll be inside Peppa's crib. Now we have to run down these steps and across galaxies until we get to our grandparents' house. Once we get in their whip, we're on our way to the beach. There's a chance you'll end up getting this cutscene which loses about a minute and there's nothing you can really do but restart or just continue. Once at the beach, we get a cutscene where Peppa's hopes and dreams die, and after interacting with the little rock, we return to the main menu and go back to the crib. Now we get in our Ferrari and make our way over to the Pope. Here we run to the right and enter the playground. After interacting with the tree, we learn that Michelangelo of the Ninja Turtles found his way up there and we have to get Madame Gazelle to bring his ass down, even though she doesn't even try and just tells us to get a ladder. Once we interact with the ladder, we return to the main menu and now we're back home. Now we run all the way right until we reach this butterfly and then we perform our 100 hours of community service and clean up the forest. After our service, we run back to the hot air balloon and make our way over to Antarctica, where again we want to return home. Now we should get a cutscene where Big Daddy and Little Mommy tells us that we're making our way over to Howl's Moving Castle, and George says the only word in his vocabulary. At Howl's Castle, we want to return back home a split second after we reach the top. And after we get back in our whip, of course the government has to use our tax dollars to fix another hole in the ground. Anyways, after we make it back to the church, we enter the magic school bus over here and make our way over to the museum. In the museum, we make our way over to this poser Buzz Aldrin that doesn't even understand the concept of radio waves, and after we land on the moon, we once again return home. Now we get a cutscene where Biggie and Liddy tells us that we're going over to Potato City. After being introduced to the park by Mr. Potato Head himself, we ride the most underwhelming roller coaster ever that I'm surprised was even... I'm not even gonna make that joke. After that, we poke our head through this carrot, we look at George feel fear for the first time, talk to the dinosaur, and finally go on to the carousel. And after everyone drops dead, my run is over at 21 minutes and 58 seconds, which would in fact put me in first place. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's like 15th place, I think. I didn't use a game timer, so. Anyways, on to the next game, Peppa Pig's World Adventure. After creating my new persona, we once again start the speedrun. Unfortunately, we have no menu warping like the last one, so we actually have to play this game out. After jumping on this puddle and creating my family, we move on to the World Cup where I beat the shit out of my mom. Now that the tutorial is done, we make our way to the church using our motorcycles. After confessing our sins, we make our way back to Peppa's crib and get in the whip. Here I actually ended up getting a little glitch that launched me forward, saving some good time from waddling my way over to the sign. Now we're going to travel over to the bustling city of New York, and we can already see that this is not realistic at all. This traffic is way too calm. After making our way up the Tipton Hotel, we find some nice little landmarks through the telescope, and that ends our journey in New York. A blessing, really. Now we make our way to the North Pole where we can go in the Polar Express. After picking up all the freeloaders, we continue right and help this kid find his lost toys because he's either blind or too lazy. After North Pole, we make our way over to Barcelona. Here we just run all the way to the right until we reach the beach where we play a little friendlies match. And apparently in the middle of our travels, Daddy Pig decided to turn into Meme Ochoa and block the shit out of my goal, making me have to run all the way back and kick the ball all the way back over, losing a lot of time. Anyways, after Barcelona, we run over to Australia. Here we get on the plane and fly our way through the Death Valley. After playing a little boomerang and cricket, who really plays that game, we make our way back and get in the bus this time. The bus takes us to the beach where we enter a submarine and make our way down to Atlantis to pick up this treasure. Now we're in the land of Harry Potter. We visit the former queen and make our way into this bus that takes us to Big Ben. After the queen rings the horn to the beat of the bell and releases her mixtape, we're now at the London Bridge. Here we let Jack Sparrow cross and the queen, playing with her life again, jumps the bridge to get over. Apparently I alone weigh more than the entire pig family and the queen combined, so I have to waddle my way over to the front of the bus. And after jumping around in the puddles, we get this little memorial that actually jump scared me the first time I saw it. After London, we make our way to Italy. The first thing we do in Italy, of course, is make the pizza. Now we have to interact with this little mailbox and go get a postcard from Miao Lejing. Once we get the postcard, we bring it over to Mommy Pig and then deliver it to the mailbox. After Italy, we enter France. After passing by Daddy Pig with another woman while her husband watches from a hot dog stand, we enter the Eiffel Tower. At the top of the tower, we look at two buildings and make our way back to the church. After confessing our newly found sins, we enter our grandparents' house and then make our way back to our whip. Now we can go to the land that shall not be named, where I accidentally left and lost about 30 seconds waddling my way back. Here we just want to run to the right, interact with Mr. Potato Head twice, and catch some carrots. Once the credits roll, that will be the end of the run. Realistically, I should have hit the first sub 26, but clearly the stars just didn't align and I hit a 26:35, which would put me in second place, but I doubt any of the mods are even still alive. Next up we have Peppa Game the Pig. Peppa Game the Jesus. Next up we have Peppa Pig the game for the DS. Very creative. After giving our save a realistic name, we can begin the speedrun once we enter our first minigame. The goal of this run is to get at least one achievement in each minigame. Our first minigame is having to pop some bubbles. This is what my 1000 hours of Overwatch has led up to, and still I somehow managed to miss most of them. After getting 100 points, we can quit the minigame and get our first achievement. Next is Hell's Kitchen. Here we just want to pour the pancake batter into our pan and flip it 3 times to serve like we're Gordon Ramsay. After repeating this 4 times, we get our achievement and move on to the next minigame. This next one involves insulting Big Daddy about 4 times, after which we get our achievement and move on.
Daddy Pig is a big car.
This next one broke my hand. You just have to spam lay eggs until you reach 100. Of course I picked up my mouse and clicked away, clicking faster than an auto clicker if anything. Next we have hide and seek with this little shit. We have 4 rooms to check and we just have to keep clicking around until we find George 3 times. This is completely RNG, so you never know where he could be hiding. Maybe he might be hiding in your room. Now we can move on to the next section where our first minigame is a game of Picasso. We just want to color anywhere, save the art, color again, save one more time, and then just move on and sell it as an NFT. Now we declare war against George. We have to just keep jumping on puddles and hope George isn't a little bitch and takes our puddles away from us. Once we hit 10 puddles, we can move on. Next is the game of Simon Says, where of course I somehow messed up and actually lost to a kid's game. That is so sad. Anyways, after winning the Simon Says 3 times, we can move on to flying higher than a kite. Here we just have to avoid the water droplets until the timer runs out. The timer is quite slow, so in reality, this takes about a century. After a century of dodging water droplets, we now start our own car wash business like Walter White. Apparently we're using Wish.com soap because sometimes it just won't get some of the dirt. Not to mention we have the water pressure of a piece of paper that just won't wash out the soap for some reason. Now the last minigame involves collecting snow to build a snowman. After we build our buddy, we have to switch through 10 pieces of clothing, after which we can just exit out the game and the run will be over. My run clocked in at 8 minutes and 13 seconds, which in fact puts me at about 6th place. Now the next game is actually my favorite run, Peppa Pig Memory Game. This speedrun is actually quite complicated. The timer begins when we click let's go, and the goal is to match each coin with the other. There's a really neat trick called phone skip where we use our phone to take a picture and look at it in order to make this game a little easier. The run ends once this well done sign shows up and we clock in our run at 28 seconds and 200 milliseconds, which would just barely put me at 14th place. But of course, world record is possible. Anyways, normally the next game would be Peppa Pig Fun and Games, but that game is literally the exact same as Peppa Pig the game, and so I decided to substitute it with another game, Peppa Pig Simulator 2 George's Revenge. The game opens with this beautifully animated cutscene where we are introduced to the characters of the game. Peppa Pig San, the strong and brave protagonist, Mummy Pig, who seems to be filing for a divorce, Daddy Pig, who seems to be in such denial that he has turned back time and begun to dab, and the main villain George the Piggy. This intro is no doubt on par with One Piece. The timer begins the moment we press start game and we want to get out of bed and into our car. Despite the fact that we have no driver's license, we want to drive ourselves downtown and into our first objective, Roden's restaurant. Our first objective is to deliver some pizzas to different colored houses, or well I guess terrain since houses don't exist. Enough to earn at least a C by the -3 Michelin chef Roden, which will get us a nice flamethrower. After Roden, we move on to the arcade where we have to play a little game of whack-a-mole. We just have to keep clicking on this little chicken, avoiding the obstacles that spawn in later. After the first round, we move on to a little chicken boss fight. Here we just have to keep shooting while avoiding any obstacles until the red chicken just blows up. Now we can move on to grocery outlet. Our objective is to find and throw away all 10 mustard bottles behind the Bermuda Triangle over here. And after that, we move on to the school. Here we're forced to learn the entire FNAF lore while simultaneously spam clicking in order to keep our sanity. And after expanding our brain 10 times, we move on to the hospital where we must go through a maze in order to find and bring back Prince Naveen. And now we can move on to Mr. Potato Head's Game Show of Death, where we can just keep spamming the first answer until we're through all 20 questions. Once the game show is over, God will bestow upon us the key to our house and tell us to hurry as George is already there. On my way back to my house, my car actually broke down, which forced me to have to slide my way over. So yeah, that was a big time loss. Now once we're in our room, we have our first George boss fight. We want to equip the flamethrower Roden gave us and keep shooting at George's head, making sure to move around and avoid all the falling objects. Now after George is defeated, we will have this cutscene where he will reveal that he is actually a Time Lord. He will then turn back time to the development of Peppa Pig Simulator 1. As one of the biggest plot twists in fiction, he will game end the developer and turn into a Hydra, which starts the final boss fight. We want to keep spam jumping and shooting so that we can destroy the heads as soon as possible. Once the final head is destroyed, that is the end of the run. Clocking in at 15 minutes and 58 seconds, this puts me right at last place, of course. We're also treated to this emotional cutscene where Peppa watches as George fades into nothing and the sun dawns on a new world. And that's about all for this video. If you want to help my sanity, please hit the subscribe button down below, like the video, and stick around for the sponsor. This video is sponsored by strawberries. They taste pretty good. Please someone help.